Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Thursday gathering. It's 6:59. We start at 7 p.m., but I'm trying to come on just a little early because this is live. I'm Dr. Talika McCoy, and if this is your first time, welcome on this evening. I hope that you will continue to join in. We study the Bible together. Whenever you see a green background, that's when I do the talk. I talk about various things. Sometimes when you have ideas, you send me messages and you say, hey, why don't you talk about this? And so whenever you see the green background, that's what that is. I want to welcome those who are joining via YouTube. Thank you so much for supporting the YouTube channel. And again, for being here, even on Facebook, if you're live today. It's 7 o'clock now. And I'm also grateful that there are people who join on the phone line as well. So welcome to those on the conference call line as well. Now, the way that I like to do this is if people have questions, comments, concerns, we like to take those head on because this should be, I try to make this a safe space where we can learn and we can grow. And so if you have questions or comments, then know that this is our space. So you can always chime in, okay? I will answer you if I see it. That's one of the benefits of being live. But even if you come in later and I see your comment, I will kindly respond, okay? And so we're going to continue this evening. And I see you, Sister Michelle, saying you're so excited for continuing discussion. Well, you all did say something about that. And so I'm responding to you, guiding this discussion and saying on last week that we should have a part two. So I believe, give the people what they want. So thank you so much for saying, communicating that it would be nice to have a part two. So last week, this talk was about Black codes, and particularly in Georgia, because I found this book. And if you're on the conference call line, and I know you are, again, thank you for being here. I'm just holding up a book that I found on Amazon. It was the only one that I could find that had a collection of Black codes, and it's for the state of Georgia. But I think that it's helpful so that, as I tell you all, I do not like to only bring my voice to these spaces. I like to hear your voices, and I like the books or the author's voices, okay? So I think that that's a better way to learn, because you know for yourself that you can go online and hear everybody's opinions. It seems like everybody's doing a podcast and going live, and, everybody's an influencer, and that's not a bad thing. It's just to substantiate information. It's important to share sometimes voices outside of yourself, and it helps you to learn and to grow and to broaden even your thoughts. Not always about what's right and wrong, but just about information. And many of us know it's important to be teachable. So in these spaces, you will see that that's what I do, because I like to learn from other people. All right. So this book in particular, I gifted a copy of it last week. And then I also told some of you that I would put the link to the book in the chat. And I did do that. So you may have received or ordered the book yourself. And you all know I like to support authors. I think that's important. But anyway, when thinking about Black codes, just want to provide a reminder. And then for those who weren't here last week, that's okay. Just know that, and I'm just looking at this book, okay? I'll say some things and make sure you know that's me talking and not the authors. But then I'll also give you space too. And I'll say what you say. If you type it or say it online, on the phone line, that's fine too. But in this book, just reminding us that Black code, or the slave code may be another term, Black code, and then many of us have heard of Jim Crow segregation. Well, when you think about laws that prohibit bodies from their fullness of life, if you will, mandated by other humans who want to oppress those bodies, then you may think of slave code, Black code, and or Jim Crow segregation. That's what it was really about. It's just a system, if you will, this arranged body of laws that devalued, dehumanized, degraded, restricted, denied, separated, punished, and oppressed people of African descent. All right. And so that's what we're going to focus on, is what the Black Code situation really looked like, because we are honoring American history. Whenever the 4th of July comes around, people are celebrating with the red, white, and blue, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that sometimes, though, that same group of people don't really understand the depth of American history. And because some of what I'm going to discuss this evening can be a hard teaching, many folks don't even want it taught, like even in formal education. So then I feel that it's the responsibility of people like me and you, us, to be sure that American history is taught. And you don't have to be a history teacher in order to do that, but you can be informed and you can share the information. So this is Black History Month, and then understanding that Black history is American history. So let's learn more about American history. Know that Black codes in American history were not just for those who were enslaved, but also for those, it was enacted, these codes were enacted to govern the lives of those who were free and those who were enslaved. So many of us know about the situation of slavery, but we think that because there was an amendment or abolishment, of slavery, that, oh, wow, these people were now free. Well, they faced then Black codes that really, when thinking about, we're in 2024, there are still people trying to close the gap of that head start that these types of laws gave to white people. So non-white people in America are still trying to bridge that gap of the Head Start. And so the way to teach this type of information, or to gather this information, is to simply think in your mind of a race. And let's say these people are going to run around the, around the track, right? And so you place the white person about so many feet ahead of everybody else, all the other, like the non-white people. So the fact is, everyone has the opportunity to be part of the race. See, that's called equality. And many times people focus on, we have to fight for equality, fight for equality. Well, we need to go a little deeper than that, because again, equality means that I'm in the race too. The problem is, there is a head start that has been given to white folks in this history of America, to where the white person is placed ahead of everyone else in the race. So then, because there's a head start, they may and will and did, when considering American history, they reached the finish line before the rest of those persons in the race. So equality, again, means that everyone was part of the race. But equity, very different word, right? Equity means you place everyone in the same position at the same time, and then everyone runs the race. And many times in our culture, in Western civilization, there are groups of people who, act like non-white people in America put themselves in that position. So they say they ought to pull themselves up by their own bootstrap. They got the same opportunities that I got. Well, again, always think about the race situation, that race around the track. So if I'm put ahead of you, then more than likely, that head start is going to give me an advantage. And that advantage is what we call privilege. And because that's the history, you believe that just by virtue of the fact that you were given that head start, because you had the white skin, just by virtue of the fact that you are white, you believe that there is that privileged situation, and that is what drives society. So then you may say, but wait, no, I'm not privileged because I had nothing to do with that. I was not here when that happened. Well, the fact of the matter is, maybe you weren't here when that happened, and now you are here. And because that happened, you benefit from your ancestors being in that head start position. So there are others who are filling that gap of that head start. And so when you hear these types of things that I'm going to read tonight, you have to understand that it's a historic oppression that is broad in the nation called the United States of America. And that has happened since the history. So the question is, even if you weren't here to do it, what do you do now because of it? And that, friends, is called white supremacy. And I can stay on that a long time. And I think I have a book behind me. If you don't really like get it, there's this white woman, Miss Robin, who wrote this book called White Fragility. So a lot of times when I'm talking about these types of things, and let's say that there are non-white people in the room, but then there are white people in the room, you know, they may start to feel some type of way, or, you know, like I just said, I wasn't here when that happened. And to all the white people and black people and Asian people and non-white people, to all the white people and the non-white people, get this book. And maybe she can help you. It says why it's so hard, white fragility, why it's so hard for white people to talk about racism. So maybe Miss Robin can help you perhaps a little more better than I can. So get this book and see how it might help you and your white friends. So now let's move on. So again, this is American history. And in this book, there are over 2,000 laws. But this is just a fraction of the amount that existed in Georgia's official code. So again, this is only focusing on Georgia. At the beginning of the book, there's definition from the revised code of 1863. So this stuff goes back, you know. But what is intended, what the oppressors intended to do, was to be sure that you non-white people understood these definitions. Because when you understood these definitions, you would find your rightful place. And I say rightful loosely, but you would find your degraded place, because I'm telling you what you are and what you're not. So this book lays out who are citizens. And that's laid out. All free white persons born in Georgia or any other state of this union who are, I'm talking about who are citizens, who are or may become residents of Georgia, with the intention to remain therein, all free white persons naturalized under the laws of the Confederate States. So again, as people are talking about these non-white folks are free, they're not even in the definition of who are citizens. And then it goes to who are white. Persons having 1/8 or more of Negro or African blood in their veins are not white persons in the meaning of this code. So again, we need to make sure you know what you are and what you're not, so that you will fall in line with these codes. Then it says free Negroes, and then it says who are persons of color. And then it says child legitimate, definition of slaves. So you people need to know who you are and who you're not. Presumption of slavery, mulatto, we got that in there. Chattels, natural rights. All of these things are in here, so that you will know. And I don't know if you all remember, but I've said this in several spaces, and it goes back to this, and I didn't tie it to it at the time. But listen to me. If you don't have a definition of who you are, people are waiting to define you. So you need to make sure that you know who you are and who you're not. You need to know what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. Because if you don't, I'm going to tell you exactly what you are and what you're not. These are the kinds of things that I have read that help me to say that to people. And many times we're saying that to children, and that's important. But there's a lot of adults walking around not defining themselves. If there was a definition book of humanity and your picture was in that book, what would be the definition beside your picture? I'm not talking about what job you occupy or what role in your family you occupy, because even those expire. But the definition that you make for yourself will never expire, because you created it. You didn't allow society to create it for you. Because when they see you, let me say me, when they see me, the first thing they see, they define me right away. The first thing they see is black woman or woman, and then they say black woman. You see, they may see one of the darker toned ones. When they see us in a particular type of way. If you're white, it's the same thing. There are some non-white people who are going to see you immediately as racist. See that? So I've already defined you because you're a white person and you're privileged. So you're a racist just like all the other white people. And because of this stuff, this history that we're going to talk about that America doesn't want to hear. And you don't want to hear it because then we define you as racist. Where if you know you're not a racist, then start thinking of reasons why. and put a definition for who you are. Because again, every one of us, I don't care if you're white, non-white, female, whatever, whoever you are, the world is waiting. There's a whole book out here right now that defines exactly what you are and who you are. And again, let me go back to what I said. I'm not talking about roles, because roles expire. I once had a grandfather, 2 of them, and now I don't have them anymore. That means that that role of granddaughter no longer exists. And I can start talking about this spiritual daddy and all this stuff all I want to, but mine, bloodline, is gone, dead. So I no longer occupy the role of granddaughter because they're dead. So what I'm saying is we have to be sure that we define ourselves by our attributes, what we give to the world, what God has given us that we know we do well, and the things that we know we don't do well, we don't get up and do that. So, and you know a way to tell that? Bring a child in the room. If you think you're a singer, bring a child in the room and start singing. If they laugh, you're not a singer. Take that out of your definition. Doesn't mean you can't sing in the choir. I'm not telling you not to do that. I'm just simply saying think about solos so that you won't get laughed at. But once you find the thing that you absolutely love to do and you're actually good at it, oh my goodness, it doesn't matter what people say about you, what their definitions are. You will get to the point where you say, I don't have to think outside of the box or do this outside the box because there are no boxes. See that? So if you don't know what you do well, try it in front of a child and they'll let you know. See, when I say things like that, it's like, oh my goodness, Dr. McCoy is so harsh. I can't believe she said that. Well, I told you all before that I went to this competition called American Idol. And when I got there, I was like 22, we're just young and ambitious, and just want to sing and become famous. I wanted to be Whitney Houston. I don't know what everybody else wanted to be. But I remember as we waited in line overnight, I slept on the road, slept on the street. I have to tell you all that story in detail, but I have a point here, so let me get going. So we slept on the road and we would be out there. We were like singing, right? We were singing, and there were some people who some of us could not believe that they were actually there to sing. And we knew how Simon Cowell was on American Idol. And I don't know if you heard, it's been a while. I guess American Idol might still come on. I don't know. But anyway, we would say, wow, when they get in front of Simon, he's going to be mighty mean to them because the person couldn't sing. And I remember in my little 22-year-old mind thinking, nobody back home. So the person went into to audition, and I remember seeing tears. Some of these people I actually saw on television. They humiliated these young people on television. And I remember thinking to myself, people let them come all the way out here to be humiliated in front of strangers when they could have been comforted in front of loved ones. So when I say, find out what you do and what you do well, you don't have to suffer that type of embarrassment. Now in the church, we're going to love you. We want you to do everything. Just come on, come on. But right now I'm talking really real, okay? Like you can serve the Lord, do all that. But I'm just saying, don't embarrass yourself. Know the definition of you. All right. Because I don't want you to be laughed at. I don't want somebody else to define you. And you're walking in this pseudo existence where you're only doing what you're doing because they said that's what you should be doing. You're only saying what you're saying because that's the way they talk. Whenever you walk into a room, you just become a chameleon and you become everything that these people want you to be. You don't have to do that. You do not have to be a circle always trying to fit in squares. This is what this stuff goes back to. And sometimes people get older and we say as you get older, you get wiser. No, everybody does not. So these types of things have to be said so that at some point in our lives, we really live an abundant life and not in the shadows of who they say we ought to be. All right. So let's look at some of this further. All right. So there were codes, black codes. Let me just tell you on so many things. So if you look at the table of contents, it says, so the definitions and restrictions. I kind of went over there a little bit. I didn't read all of it, but listen to this. Black codes in Georgia. Black code. Marriage is a topic here. Worship. Business and commerce. Sale and purchase of blacks, employment, segregation, education, military, conduct and punishment, revised codes are in here, guardianship, miscellaneous, even Native Americans, all right? So let me just read a few to you, all right? Marriage and family codes. 1749, no intermarriage between white people and Negroes. And you wonder why white people get upset about that and why black people get upset about that. And I'm saying white and black, but let me just try and say white and non-white. Let me try and say it like that. But this book focuses on Negroes a lot, okay? So when you hear me say white and black, I'm also going to include some non-white folks because this book talks about that too. Basically, if you're not white, then you're not right. So no intermarriage between white people and Negroes. So you wonder why black people get upset or non-white people get upset because they see somebody with somebody white, or white people get upset because they see somebody with somebody that's non-white or whatever. The blacks, the whites, the whoever get upset because that's who we are as a country. And until we start to change some of our behaviors and the ways we are toward one another, it's going to be that way. That's the history of this country, is that we're not supposed to be that way. Black people, non-white, stay on your side and white stay on the other side. That's why, if it's you, that's why you get so upset, because it's embedded in our history, in American history. All right. 1865, among persons of color, the parent shall be required to maintain his or her children, whether legitimate or illegitimate. So now we're talking about how slave owners would rape the enslaved. And many times those babies would be of mixed race, right? And so the enslaved person, even if it was the husband, and he was upset because, my goodness, my woman just had a baby after being raped by this slave owner, that man could be upset, but you still have to maintain the parenting of that child. You can't put that child away. We might get them pregnant, but you're going to keep them over there in the slave quarters. We might get them pregnant, but you're going to take care of them. And black women, you're going to nurse our white kids too. So when you start thinking about how black bodies are even today, why are you in this neighborhood, for example? Why black body? It's part of the history of this country. Even in 1865, your black body woman was mine at that time if I wanted it, and I took it. And when your black body has my child, I don't have to deal with that. So now when you hear people talking about, oh, black men are not there for their children. Let me say that one again, because I'm tired of people saying negative things about black men. Black men are not there for their children. Well, the history of this country is such, when a white man impregnated a black woman, he did not have to worry about taking care of that child. It's part of American history. Person of color maintained that legitimate or illegitimate child. Have you read Frederick Douglass, The Narrative of Frederick Douglass? You ought to come to read that one. That's a really great, oh, there it is. This book is really awesome. You ought to come to read this, and you will know exactly what it was like for an enslaved person in America. If you want to know the history, you read this book, and he'll tell you more about what I'm saying. So a lot of the things that I'm saying are not just coming off the top of my head. I'm not taking credit for that, all right? I'm saying it because it's in a book somewhere from somebody who actually lived it. I was not here, but I read the book. All right. And in a lot of ways, I got the t-shirt because I have a shirt with him on it. I think I may have worn it last week, but that's another good book to have. And then last week I mentioned this book. This is that book Caste, when I talked about how human beings are put in particular categories. And I can keep talking about that one too, but that's another good book. All of these are on Amazon. Okay, so let's see. There's another one here I wanted to talk about. Okay, so now they give a deeper definition of persons of color. And they want you to be sure you know who white people are too. Okay, so 1927. So that's why when people say, I don't see color, and color doesn't matter. I hear what you're saying. And when it comes to the history of this country, that's exactly what many laws have been based around or based upon. And now, rather than overt ways, it's covert. So rather than whether in open ways where it's just like, oh, we can see that. Now it's more undercover. You know, I talked to you before about redlining, you know, where persons are being sure that certain folks don't live in particular neighborhoods. And many of us know about gentrification. These are not new things. It's just another tactic of white supremacy. It's part of the history of this country. So 1927, an act to define who are persons of color and who are white persons. To do what? I'm talking about to prohibit and prevent intermarriage. Still talking about marriage of such persons. So then it starts talking about all Negroes, mulattoes. This word is mestizos and their descendants. So they want to make sure that your children, even before they're born, they have a definition too. So that's the thing. What are you saying to your children and your grandchildren? So even the descendants having any ascertainable trace of either Negro or African, West Indian, or Asiatic Indian blood in their veins, and all descendants of any person having either Negro or African, West Indian, or Indian blood in his or her veins shall be known in Georgia as persons of color. It shall be a felony for any person to willingly or knowingly make or cause to be made a registration certificate false as to the color or race, and upon conviction thereof, such as person shall be punished by imprisonment. So want to make sure that you're not a black person trying to pass. You know, there are some beautiful black people who are lighter skinned, and you may not really know, you know, if they are Negro or of African descent. So they want to make sure for those persons that you know that you can be convicted for trying to pass, you know, as white. So that's what that's about, all right? That from and after the passage of this act, it shall be unlawful for any white person to marry any save a white person. So just saying it will be, and they wrote that like scripture. Let me read that again. Listen to this. Let me say that again. That from and after the passage of this act, it shall be unlawful for a white person to marry any save a white person. Sounds almost like scripture. Any person, white or otherwise, who shall marry or go through a marriage ceremony in violation of this provision shall be guilty of felony and shall be punished by imprisonment. So even those white people, like today in 2024, who want to do the right thing, understanding that we're all made in the image of God, even they have restrictions. So if they wanted to marry someone who was non-white, they would have to be careful. So then, this reminds us that racism has hurt all of us, not just non-white people. Because even the white person who thinks that they are superior, that is a type of insanity. So their minds have been tainted. So they don't even realize that they too have been hurt by racism. So then there are worship codes. So that was about marriage. Let me move on to worship codes. Worship codes. 1833. No person of color, whether free or slave, shall be allowed to preach or exhort or join any religious exercise with any persons of color, either free or slave, there being more than 7 persons of color present. They shall first obtain a written certificate from 3 ordained ministers of the gospel of their own order, you know, whether they be Baptist, Presbyterian, licensed not to be for a longer term than 6 months. So you can't tell people about Jesus, but about 6 months. Then after that, and to be revocable, not irrevocable, revocable at any time, meaning they can take that license back, be revocable at any time by the persons granting it. So this is why, you know, when I hear people talking now in 2024 about they don't believe in women preachers, they don't believe, well, my great granddaddy was a preacher at New Light Missionary Baptist Church in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I never had the pleasure of meeting him. But when I read things like this, I'm like, you're thinking about women not preaching. My own great-grandfather, and those before him would not have been able to preach. So it's very difficult for me to really argue that, because black folk, non-white folk, period, there was a time when they couldn't preach. So if you start thinking about women not preaching, if you are black or non-white, just know, hey, you couldn't preach either. So this is why we have to be so careful, to where if we are part of the oppressed or have been part of the oppressed group, that we don't become oppressors, okay? Because there was a time when you couldn't do it either. So, so I just kind of sit back and look at the history, and sometimes, when it comes to who can preach and who can't preach, it's just part of American history repeating itself. But when you learn the history, it can help you. Along with, of course, learning how to properly interpret scripture. I see you, Brother Coleman. Do you agree or disagree that black person marrying a white person? Do I agree or disagree? I agree that all people are human beings, and all people, have the breath of God in their bodies. And because that breath lies within that person, when it's triggered, they learn how to love right. And when you love right, love is not white. Love is not non-white. Love is love. And so I just simply agree that humans are humans. And so I feel like love is one of those things that we're still trying to figure out. Bless our hearts. Bless our hearts. The Bible says love one another, and we just started making it whatever we wanted it to be, I suppose. But I'm just saying, Lord, help me to love like you said. And all those particulars, you will figure it out, God, for me, and then I'll understand it better by and by. So I just agree that all people simply need to love. So love is not about really that. So I hope I answered your question. That's what I believe. That's what I believe. So, okay, let's see. Let's move on, because I really want you all to hear this one. Oh, okay, so I'm moving on so I talked about marriage. I'm skipping some of it because I can't talk about all of it. It's already 7:31, and we usually have 30 minutes here. But I talked about marriage. I talked about worship. Now I want to talk a little bit about business and commerce codes. Listen to this, 1843. All white persons residing in said town, this town in Georgia was called Cassville, Cassville. All white persons residing in that town, listen to this now. The white people shall pay a poll tax to said town of 50 cents. Now remember, I talked about the Head Start. I wasn't just talking. The white people pay 50 cents of a poll tax. And all free persons of color residing or who may hereafter reside in the said town, even if you come here, listen, if you're over 21 years of age, shall in like manner pay a town tax. But do you think it's 50 cents? Pay the town tax. Now, the white people are paying a poll tax of 50 cents. The non-white people pay $2. So then, when you hear me talk about everything I talk about, you all, comes from somewhere. I am not all knowledgeable. I am not trying to prove that I'm right. I don't care about any of that. But I do know some history. And according to history, when we start thinking about businesses, and if we are, I don't care if you're white or not, black or not, Asian or not, when we start talking about black businesses, if that bothers you in any way, shape, or form, just know that it is a beautiful thing that these people, these descendants of these colored people, these free or colored people, black people, it is a blessing that the descendants of these people who had to pay more than the white folks paid now have their own businesses. So I've heard black people say, I don't like shopping at black businesses because they always charge more. They charge more. So then what the black people do is many of them, they go over to the other store, where whoever owns it, I don't know, but it's not a black business. And they go over there and they spend their money over there, but they don't spend their money at the black businesses. Well, understand that 50 cents and $2 are Totally different things. So if these black person's descendants were used to paying more, it takes more now because of this head start that the white people got. The white people have all money, 50 cents. Does not mean that white people don't struggle. Hear me and hear me clearly. I'm not saying that white people don't struggle financially. I'm not saying that. Don't try to hear what I'm not saying. Hear what I am saying. What I am saying is that America has a history of a head start that looks like charging white people less than black people. So then black people trying to run and catch up created their own schools. But then you have these white schools that have been around for years and again have old money. So then there are people who say, well, why can't those black schools get it together and have it like the white school? Sweetheart, we're still trying to catch up. Why can't the black schools, why can't they get it together? They never messed it up in the first place. Still trying to catch up. I don't understand why the black church doesn't have the kind of money. What are they doing with the money? Again, trying to catch up. Because remember now, Richard Allen was not able to worship in the church with the black folk. So then that's when he created AME. You know, when you think about AME and you hear AME Zion as well. But when you think about that, this man had to start that because he could not worship with the white folks. You just heard me read one of the worship codes. So again, we have to watch what we say because we really don't know what we're talking about. And it's okay to have an opinion, but at least try to have an informed opinion. See that? That's all. So you can believe whatever you want, but please hear what I am saying and not what I'm not saying, and do with it what you will. So then when you hear me applauding black folk, and when you hear me say that I'm pro-black, doesn't mean I'm anti-white. And you hear me say other things, it's because the history informs my position. And until all of us as human beings get it right in America, we're going to continue to have a problem. So let me keep going. Okay, when thinking about business and commerce, 1845, act to prohibit, this was an act to prohibit colored mechanics and masons, to prohibit them being slaves or free persons of color, prohibit them contracts. They could not have contracts. It prohibits those persons who were mechanics and masons from making contracts to the erection of buildings or for the repair of buildings, and declaring the white person directly or indirectly contracting with them or employing them. So again, if there were white people who were not interested in this, they still needed or had to, unless they broke the law, right, follow this. This is the history of America. Listen to this one, and then I'm going to move on. 1925, still talking about business and commerce. No license to operate a billiard room. Now, we know what a billiard room is, right? Like the pool, playing pool, pool hall. No license to operate a billiard room shall be issued to any person of the white or Caucasian race to operate a billiard room to be used or patronized by persons of the Negro race. So white people, don't you dare. You can't do that. You cannot operate a billiard where Negroes, black people would come, or to any person of the Negro race to operate a billiard room to be used by or patronized by persons of white or Caucasian race. So they wanted to make sure that even if the black person and the white person were really good friends, and I don't know about you, but I have some white people who are really good friends, and I love them, but we couldn't play pool together. They couldn't come over to my side, and I couldn't come over to their side. And that pains me because I know some wonderful people, not just white, but just people, period. So I'm just like, man, this history hurt all of us. So let me move on. Let me move on a little further and talk about, there's so many good things. Okay, there's segregation codes, 1891. It is unlawful for white and colored convicts to be confined together or work chained together. Right? So if you had a black friend or a white friend, nope. Education codes, 1870. It shall be the duty of the trustees in their respective districts, talking about education, to make all necessary arrangements for the instruction of the white and colored youth of the district in separate schools. The children of the white and colored races shall not be taught together in any sub-district of Georgia. So the kids can't learn together. And I can stay on that. You know, there are some people who say they don't believe that integration should have ever happened, because they feel like if we would just stay separated, some of this stuff, some of the history, you know, our kids and black kids would know. And then there are some, you know, and then there are some who say also it was a bad idea because all they did was, they said that it was okay. But then there are others who say, no, it's good that we integrated, because what used to happen was the black kids would get old school books from the white kids, from the white schools. So that's just another. But I'm going to stop here because I want to share a quote with you by Marcus Garvey. And many of you may know Marcus Garvey. He was born in Jamaica, and he was a fighter for the race, for the black race. This is what he said as we conclude. I know this is this our last Bible study in February? No, we'll meet again on next week. Hey, if you have some ideas, we can talk some more, because Black History Month is not over. But if you stay with me, you know I talk about Black history and American history. You know, I talk about all of it all the time. So I don't need a month. But we'll be thinking about that. But listen to what Marcus Garvey said. He said, and it's in this book. I was like, wow. I was really like, that's great. This is impressive. They put his quote in this book. He said, the black skin is not a badge of shame, but rather a glorious symbol of national greatness. Let me say that again. The black skin is not a badge of shame, but rather a glorious symbol of national greatness. Wow, that's how America needs to see it. And then he says, God and nature first made us what we are. And then out of our own created genius, we make ourselves what we want to be. So as I said, now it's me talking, not Garvey. He said we make ourselves what we want to be. I talked about you defining yourself. This is kind of connected to what he just said. Okay. Be sure that you're able to consider who you are. And if you're not where you want to be right now, start thinking about where you want to be. You're never too old to do that. I see you, Sister Michelle. Let's end the month with another chat. What a way to honor Black history. Okay, well, I've got plenty of books, and I have a whole lot. You could probably tell by my passion that I have a lot inside of me when it comes to this type of discussion. I've often told people that, again, I'm not anti-white. I'm pro-black. That doesn't mean I'm anti-white. And I've told people before, I love black people. I love, the culture. I love the black church. And it took me a long time, but I love myself. But I had to start loving myself first because I just had issues. I just had issues with my black skin. I didn't think of it as, I did think of it as a badge of shame. I'll do that, Sister Michelle. Look, I have a picture of myself. I try to look at it because this little girl, and on the conference call line, I'm just showing a picture of me as a child. You hear passion in my voice when I talk about these things because this little girl in this picture, she was not the person that you hear talking about these things now. It took her years, to love herself. See that little kinky hair right there? She had a problem with that kinky hair. And so now when people say they're going to go natural, I remind them that if you ever processed your hair, you're not going natural when you choose to make a different choice. You're going back, okay? And that's okay. You wear your hair however you want to, but don't ever say you're going natural. You're going back to natural. So whenever you all see my little hair now as an adult, for me, that was a part of me embracing my love for me. There was nothing wrong with my little kinky hair in the first place, right? The other thing I can share with you is that my brown skin, I would see black people on television and things like that, but their skin was usually lighter. And I have a cousin, her name is Talisha. My name is Talika, her name is Talisha. And Talisha, my cousin, is a beautiful woman. You ever see her? Her skin is really light, so growing up, I remember like groups like something called a Salt and a Pepper. And so whenever I would see Salt and Pepper, one was dark and one was light. And because my baby dolls were light, like Barbie, and my cousin was light, I always thought that she was closer to what was right because it was white. And so, that little brown skin that you see in this picture, oh, I did not like it. Oh, I told my mom, I said, Mama, I'm just so ugly. She would always tell me that I was pretty. But everybody's mama tells them that, right? So I didn't believe her. But she was so wonderful, my mom. Well, she is so wonderful. She's still with us. And then I can tell you that my teeth were so white. And I thought to myself, how can that skin be so dark and the hair be so kinky and those big old, I felt like I had just a big mouth and all the teeth showed at the same time. And I would look at other people and I would say, their mouth is not as big as mine. And I had a problem with that too. So I had kinky hair, I had dark brown skin, and I had the only thing that was close to white were these teeth in my mouth. And I thought that was a terrible combination. But when I started reading about the history of America, maybe that's why they don't want non-white kids to know the history. Because when I started reading books and I started to have teachers who look like me. And I started thinking, oh my goodness, there's more, in store. And so I started reading and I started saying, I'm made in God's image too. And if God made everything that is good, that means I have good hair too. Because in the black community, the only hair that they would say was good was like this little either straight or curly hair, the kind of hair that you can just easily take a comb through. But mine had to have a hot comb sent through it because it was so hard to deal with. But now, thanks be to God, between meeting some wonderful black educators, between starting to read some books that actually interest me and not books that formal education made me read, which is nothing wrong with all those books, but make sure you read some other things. Once I started reading, and then when God taught me and said, sweetheart, I could hear God calling me sweetheart. The beauty that you have on the inside will always be greater than the beauty that you have on the outside. So every time somebody tells me I'm beautiful, and I see you all saying beautiful, pretty, thank you. And my mom saying you are still beautiful and pretty, thank you, Mom. But every time I hear people say that now, I'm grateful. But I needed that when I was a little kid, and I needed that when I was a teenager. Now, I don't need you to tell me, because now my beauty is so deep that even if you say nothing, because God has made me in God's image, you never have to say it at all. And I know that I'm beautiful. And I know that that starts from the inside, and all you're seeing is it shining on the outside. So thank you so much for the whole beautiful thing. I appreciate it. I thank God that I understand what inner beauty is. So that means that even if I live to be 95 or 100, I will still be beautiful. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, that even if you're beautiful when you're young, you don't really have a whole lot to do with that. But as you get older, you take care of yourself. On the inside, I'm talking. Take care of your mental health. That's why I talked to you about that. Take care of your emotional health. Don't let anybody bring you down. Take care of your physical health, right? Not just so you can be skinny. No. Take care of your physical health and take care of your spiritual health. All of you matter, because at the end of the day, the older you get and you preserve your beauty, that's when it really counts. Babies are beautiful when they're born, right? But preserve your beauty and your handsomeness and whatever by being good from the inside out. So when you see me, I already know because I've already created my definition. What is yours? God bless you. Thank you for being here. Love yourself first, all right? Even the Bible says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Love yourself first, all right? Get some of these books and just read them and just think. That's what I do. Just think a whole lot. And on next week, we'll do something else. I guess I'll keep my green background up or something. I see you, Sister Tucker, saying, oh, you're welcome, Sister Michelle. Hi, Sister Stephanie and Sister Princess and Sister Samantha and Sister Katrina or Katina. Sister Dorothy and Brother Mark and Sister Barbara. My goodness, you all are here. Sister Tucker says, awareness of God's blessings and the beauty of how he made you. That's right. Different and glorious from others. That's right. So when I'm talking, you ought to be thinking about yourself the same way. You're welcome, Sister Samantha. And thank you on the conference call line for staying and being here too, okay? All right. Yes. Have a great night. Everybody have a great night. And thank you for being here. And we'll see what I come up with next week. If you have an idea, just let me know. All right. See you later. Have a good night.